name is Ethan. I'm 16. It all started on a humid Friday evening in Dallas. My friends Kyle, Zach, and I planned to spend the night at my place, indulging in our favorite pastime, binge watching horror movies until we couldn't keep our eyes open. We had a stack of DVDs, a mountain of snacks, and the night stretched ahead of us like an unwritten chapter. By the time the clock struck midnight, we were already halfway through our third movie, a slasher flick that had Kyle clutching his pillow tightly. Zach, ever the brave one, laughed it off, making fun of the absurdity of the plot. I was somewhere in between, amused by their antics, but feeling the eerie tug of the movie's chilling atmosphere. Around 1 a.m., just as the masked killer on the screen was about to claim another victim, we heard it, a strange rustling noise from the backyard. At first we thought it was just the wind, or maybe the neighbor's cat prowling around, but as we strained our ears, the noises seemed more deliberate, more intrusive. They were sharp rustles and quiet thuds that didn't fit with the usual nighttime sounds. Maybe it's raccoons, I suggested, trying to dismiss the growing unease. Zach laughed. Or maybe it's a serial killer trying to get in? Kyle shot him a look. Not funny, man. But Zach couldn't resist. Come on, Kyle, this is the perfect setting for a horror movie of our own. 3 kids alone, strange noises outside. Despite his attempt at humor, I could see the anxiety flickering in Kyle's eyes, and I felt it too. I was on edge, my mind racing through every horror movie scenario we'd just watched. I told myself it was all in my head, that we were safe inside the house. Then a louder thud echoed through the room. We all froze, eyes darting toward the back door that led to the yard. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a reminder of the tension building inside me. Zach, trying to shake off the fear, stood up. I'm gonna check it out. It's probably nothing. He grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer, and with a confidence that didn't match his worried eyes, he headed to the door. Be careful, Kyle said, his voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to go with him, but my feet felt glued to the spot. We watched as Zach unlocked the door and slowly swung it open. The cool night air rushed in, along with the familiar sounds of chirping crickets and rustling leaves, but there was something else, a shape, a presence. Standing there, just outside the door, was a man. He wore a ski mask, the kind that leaves only the eyes exposed. He stood perfectly still, staring directly at us, and in that moment, time seemed to stop. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. It was as if the scene had been ripped from one of our movies and brought to life. Except, this was all too real. Zach stepped back, his voice cracking as he called out, "Who are you? What do you want?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he took a step forward, the light from the house casting a long shadow behind him. Panic surged through me, and I stumbled backward, crashing into the coffee table. Kyle was already reaching for his phone, his hands shaking as he dialed 911. The intruder seemed to sense the urgency, his head snapping toward the sound of Kyle's voice. And then, without warning, he turned and sprinted into the darkness, disappearing into the night. We slammed the door shut, bolting it and pulling the curtains tight, as if that could somehow erase the memory of what we'd just seen. The minutes stretched into an eternity as we waited for the police, every creak of the house setting our nerves on edge. When the officers arrived, they searched the yard, finding evidence that someone had been lurking there for hours. Trampled bushes, footprints leading to and from the house, but the man himself was gone, leaving us with only questions and a lingering fear. The police assured us they'd patrol the area, that they'd find the guy, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. As the night wore on and the adrenaline faded, we were left with the unsettling reality that the masked intruder had been watching us, silently observing from the shadows. None of us slept that night. Even as dawn broke, the light did little to dispel the fear that had taken root. Zach tried to joke about it, saying we'd have a story to tell at school on Monday, but the laughter didn't come easily. In the weeks that followed, I found myself glancing over my shoulder, double-checking locks, and jumping at every unexpected sound. The safety of my home felt compromised, the shadows now full of potential threats. We never did find out who the man was or why he'd chosen our house, but his presence left a mark, a reminder that sometimes the things we fear in movies can seep into reality, blurring the lines between fiction and our own lives. And every so often, when the wind rustles the trees just right, I feel the prickling of unease, wondering if he'll ever return. I'm Madison, and what I'm about to share happened to me about 10 years ago. Even though so much time has passed, it still feels as fresh as yesterday. It was a sleepover with my closest friends, and it turned into the most terrifying night of my life. It was a warm summer evening in Austin, and my friends Brooke, Hannah, Olivia, Claire, and I had decided to have a sleepover at my house. We were all 15, enjoying the freedom of summer and the excitement of being together without any parents around to supervise. My parents were out for the night, trusting us to be responsible. We spent the evening watching movies and gorging on popcorn and candy, giggling at everything and sharing secrets like teenage girls do. As the night wore on, the energy in the room shifted from lively to sleepy. Around midnight, we set up our sleeping bags in the living room, arranging them in a circle, our heads close together. After hours of chatting, we finally drifted off to sleep. The quiet of the house settled around us like a warm blanket. I remember the soft hum of the fan, the occasional chirp of a cricket outside, and the feeling of safety among my friends. But when I woke up, it was still dark, and something felt off. I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. The room was dimly lit by the streetlights filtering through the curtains. I glanced around, trying to shake the unease creeping up my spine. That's when I noticed it. Claire's sleeping bag was empty. At first I thought maybe she'd gone to the bathroom, but the bathroom light wasn't on, and the door was ajar. My heart started to race. I nudged Brooke, who was sleeping next to me. "Brooke, wake up, Claire's gone," I whispered urgently. Brooke blinked, confused and groggy. "What do you mean she's gone?" "She's not here. Her stuff is still here, but she's not." We woke up Hannah and Olivia, who immediately sensed the panic in my voice. We searched the entire house, calling out Claire's name, but there was no response. Her phone, her shoes, everything was left behind, as if she had just vanished into thin air. Fear gripped us. We checked every room, every closet, even under the beds, but Claire was nowhere to be found. The door was still locked from the inside, and all the windows were shut. It didn't make any sense. How could she have left without unlocking the door or making a sound? It was Olivia who first suggested calling the police. We hesitated at first, but deep down, we knew something was very wrong. I dialed 911, my hands trembling as I explained the situation. The police arrived within minutes, their presence both reassuring and terrifying. They took our statements, asking if Claire had ever mentioned running away or if she'd seemed upset. But Claire was one of the happiest among us, always the life of the party, the one with the infectious laugh. As the police began searching the neighborhood, one of the officers returned with news that made my blood run cold. A neighbor, an older man who lived alone at the end of the street, had been acting suspiciously. He had a history of mental illness and had been seen wandering around late at night. The officers went to his house, and what they found was chilling. Claire was there, unharmed but shaken. The man had broken into my house while we were sleeping and taken her without us noticing. She had woken up in his house, confused and scared, but thankfully she was okay. When the police brought Claire back to us, we were all in tears, hugging her tightly, relief beyond words. She told us that weird was that the man hadn't hurt her. He just kept talking to her as if she were someone he knew from long ago. It was clear he wasn't in his right mind. The police arrested the man, and Claire's parents took her home, grateful that she was safe. But the events of that night left a scar on all of us. The idea that someone could come into my home, into what felt like the safest place in the world, and take one of us was terrifying. For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep without checking the locks multiple times. The darkness felt different, full of potential threats. My parents installed extra security, and we all became more cautious. That sleepover which was supposed to be a night of fun and laughter, taught us how quickly life can change. Claire eventually recovered, but the memory of that night stayed with us, a haunting reminder of how vulnerable we truly are. Now, whenever I hear a noise at night, I still feel a shiver of fear, wondering what might be lurking in the shadows. I'm Noah, and this happened to me about 8 years ago when I was 14. It was a clear summer night in a rural area near Amarillo. My friends Jack, Tyler, Ryan, and I were at Jack's house for a sleepover. His place was perfect for adventure, surrounded by fields and woods that seemed to stretch forever. We had been looking forward to this night all week, planning to play flashlight tag as soon as the sun went down. The air was cool and the sky was full of stars as we started our game. We split up, running and hiding around Jack's large property, our flashlights darting through the darkness. I was it, chasing Tyler when I first saw it. A shadowy figure standing just beyond the tree line at the edge of the woods. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, or one of the guys trying to spook me. I stopped and pointed my flashlight at the figure, calling out to Tyler, "Hey, is that you over there?" Tyler's voice came from the opposite direction. "I'm right here, dude." A chill ran down my spine. The figure stood completely still, just watching us. I felt a wave of fear and shouted for the others to come. Jack and Ryan jogged over and we all shone our flashlights toward the spot, but the figure was gone. "Maybe it was just a deer or something," Jack suggested, trying to sound brave. "Yeah, probably just our imaginations," Ryan added, though he didn't sound convinced. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was someone watching us. Still, we decided to continue the game, though we stayed closer together. Laughter mixed with unease as we sprinted across the yard, our flashlights casting playful shadows. Every so often, I would catch sight of the figure again, standing just at the edge of my vision, closer each time. Finally, when I saw the figure standing between two trees, not 50 feet away, I called out again, my voice shaking. "Whoever you are, this isn't funny." But there was no response, only the whisper of the wind through the leaves. We stopped playing and stood together, a tight circle of nervous energy. "We should go inside," Tyler said, and we all agreed. Once inside Jack's house, we locked all the doors and windows. We were all on edge, our earlier excitement replaced by a creeping dread. We turned off the lights, peeking out the window to see if the figure was still out there. And it was. Standing just beyond the porch light, staring at the house, its silhouette was dark and menacing, an outline of something that didn't belong. It was as if it was daring us to come back outside. Jack grabbed the phone and called the police, his voice shaking as he explained what was happening. The operator assured us they would send someone over, but it felt like hours before we saw the red and blue lights flashing down the driveway. The police searched the property and the woods, but found no trace of anyone. They told us it was probably a prank or maybe a local trying to scare some city kids, but their words didn't comfort us. We could see the unease in their eyes too. After the police left, we sat in the living room, trying to calm our nerves. But every little noise made us jump, our imaginations running wild. Eventually, exhaustion overcame our fear, and we drifted into an uneasy sleep, all huddled together in our sleeping bags. The next morning, we tried to laugh it off, teasing each other about being scared of shadows, but none of us could shake the feeling that we were still being watched. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see the figure lurking in the daylight. Even after the sleepover ended, the memory of that night haunted us. For weeks, I couldn't sleep without checking the locks on every door and window. I avoided Jack's house and the woods, afraid of what might be hiding in the shadows. We never found out who or what the figure was. Maybe it was a prank or just a figment of our imaginations amplified by the darkness, but deep down, I knew it was real. It was a silent reminder that the night holds secrets, some better left undiscovered. That night taught me that sometimes the most frightening things are the ones you can't explain. And even now, whenever I find myself alone in the dark, I feel the same chill run down my spine, wondering if I'm really alone.